Thank you for joining us at the ever-improving No Soundbites Allowed podcast. My name is Michael Vasquez. We thank you for joining us in this adventure of describing the politics that go on in our nation on a personal and local level as often as possible, giving you, the audience, more than just 30 seconds to understand what's going on in our nation. We look forward to joining you as we go. Just sit back, enjoy the ride. Please remember, if you like the episodes, like it, share it, let other people know, and if you can, please donate, even if it's $2, even if it's $5, because it all makes a difference. We thank you, and here we go. Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us. That's right, it's Michael Voss, the Dragon of the Southern Tier. I'm here with you today, and I hope everyone is doing well. We're having a nice episode today because I was at an event. I had a great time today. I was over at at Colgate University, where there was a debate between Anthony Brindisi, the challenger for the New York 22nd Congressional District, and Claudia Tenney, who is the incumbent in the race, the incoming congresswoman. And they had a debate. It was featured on Spectrum News in central New York, and you can see that. That was on earlier today. I believe it'll be on again at about 12:30 tonight. I'm publishing this at October 25th, so you may not see it, but it will be on Sunday as well. I do invite all of the public to see this, to be able to know more about their candidates. But I did want to give my impressions about this, and also an event that happened 2 days ago. That was on October 23rd, Tuesday, which was over at the 9 Riverside Drive in Binghamton, New York. It was the Jewish temple there. I forget the name of the temple. I apologize. I don't remember it at this moment. And Mr. Brindisi had appeared there at 7 p.m. and he spoke to the audience. I am getting that audio cleaned up so that people can hear that, especially a conversation I had with Mr. Brindisi. But I want to make comments on both of these things, and more importantly, to address some of the things that were said and not said in the debate. Now, the first thing I should say, and I do want to start off with, is I think that the moderator, the lead moderator there, who was Liz Benjamin, who is known for the Capital Tonight program on Spectrum News, she did a very good job of keeping control over the event. Obviously, whenever there's a debate between candidates, it can be very heated, it can be very energetic amongst the candidates, and they do have some cross-talking. And we see this is normal. It happens in every debate for every election. And Ms. Benjamin did a very good job of keeping the candidates on subject, reasonably on time, and addressing the issues, but yet still allowing them to give additional feedback and to respond to each other on what was being said and what was being alleged, and for clarification, which I thought was very important. As I recall, in seeing it live at Colgate and also seeing it again in part, I did see the full thing, the full repost publishing of it on news today. But in watching it, I recall there was about 2 times that Claudia Tenney was asked to clarify a position or to confirm something that she had said or was related to what she had said. And I believe there was about 5 or 6 times that happened for Mr. Brindisi, where he needed further clarification, and Ms. Benjamin usually took the lead on that. So I thought that was really well done, and I do want to commend her on doing that. Many of my colleagues in the industry, I do political commentary, but she is actually hard news, and I think she did a pretty good job of that, and that isn't always commended as it should be. But I had a lot of problems with this event, in that, well, mostly in the answers that were being given, especially and specifically by Anthony Brindisi. And I think some of the questions could have been a little bit different, because we didn't hear anything about the international policy, which is a very big deal and very important. We didn't hear about North Korea. We didn't hear about Iran. We didn't hear about the missile, the nuclear deal, Iran nuclear deal. That wasn't addressed at all. That is something that's ongoing and is a current issue, and is something that will be facing Congress in the near term. We didn't hear about the continued work with North Korea and the peace talks that have begun under President Trump. We didn't hear about that, and that's something that will be facing Congress and will have ramifications, and that's important. We didn't hear about international trade with China and how the tariffs are having an impact on that, just as they did with Canada and Mexico in having NAFTA rewritten, and we really didn't address that. A lot of the economics that were involved that are affecting us right now were not addressed, and I think that was a failure on the part of Colgate to an extent. They may have wanted to go into those things and just didn't have time, or maybe they didn't have those questions, I don't know, but I think it was very important. Addressing the economic spurt, the growth that we've seen in unemployment throughout this nation, and especially in New York State, where it's absolutely needed, in the central New York region, in the Mohawk Valley and down in the southern tier, it is absolutely needed. We didn't hear anything about that. That's important. So at the same time, while I give them, I commend Liz Benjamin in what she did during the debate, I also must detract from the debate over at Colgate and all of the moderators involved in not having questions and addressing subjects that are very important that any member of Congress coming up in 2019 are going to be addressing, that are important for the public to be aware of. Not just the immigration and not just the health care, but so many other issues that really didn't get addressed and really didn't get talked on. And they should be, and they really, really need to be. But that's another question. And as far as I know, to date, we have not heard Anthony Brindisi offer his position on North Korea and the peace talks. We have not heard his position. He has not mentioned anything in any of his speeches. He's done 12 town hall events that I'm aware of. I've been to 4 of them. And I've heard him speak. I've recorded several of them. If you've heard some of my earlier podcasts, you can hear I've played several times where I've asked him questions and he has either refused to answer or walked around the question and never addressed or answered the question that was inherent and asked of him. So there are some issues I have with the questions there. But let me move forward. Of the questions that were asked and the things that were being discussed, there were a few things that I particularly know. Now, for those who are not aware, I do political commentary, okay? And I've spoken to pretty much every candidate and elected official in the New York 22nd region for the last 10, 12 years, especially those who have been running for the New York 22nd race. And I've spoken to just about everyone. And I've offered every single one of them an opportunity to have an interview with me, which is universally understood. I'm very fair about that. I ask tough questions of everyone. I expect full answers, and I don't let them get away with little silly tricks that I see sometimes where they try and walk around actually answering the question. So I've been doing this a long time, and it's late at night tonight, so please bear with me for a moment if I'm a little tired and I won't have too many screens to go to. But I find it very important because I've been following Anthony Brindisi, and I've known Anthony Brindisi for about 5 years, roughly about 5 years now, going back 2013, 2014, roughly, that we first started interacting with each other. And I've met him when he first kicked his campaign off down in the Southern Tier region in person back in May of 2017, or was it June? It might have been June. But I did meet him in person. We've spoken several times in person. He has refused every request I have made for about 18 months now to have an interview. Although at our last meeting on the 23rd of October of 2018, he did mention that if he were lucky enough to win, he would be willing to do an interview with me. Well, that would be nice, except it's way too late. And he loves to mention that he doesn't think I'm actually news, even though he's done interviews with me in the past, which he admits and he can't deny because it's a record, it's public record. But now since he's running, he doesn't want to acknowledge it because he doesn't want to do an interview and take a question from me, because I understand and I've been following his record for a long time. Speaking of which, Mr. Brindisi made several claims and several statements, and people who have seen the Spectrum interview on TV will be able to see some of those claims. And I'm going to address a couple of those things. Like, one of the first things that I think that's very important is in talking about the spending from outside groups. Now, Anthony Brindisi is very vocal, and he made a very clear statement early in the debate talking about the outside spending, that he's against political action groups, and in particular super political action groups, which are allowed to be able to spend into campaigns separate of anything to do with any of the candidates and make targeted either in support ads in support of or against another candidate. And Mr. Brindisi is very much against that when it comes to Claudia Tenney. He doesn't like any of her outside PACs to be involved in this race, and he would like to get rid of them. He doesn't want to address any of his outside PACs. And that's something that I think that's very important for people to understand. So when he's saying he doesn't like corporate PACs, he's saying he doesn't like Claudia Tenney's outside PACs because he has 16 outside PACs. And let me make sure I let you know where I see that from. This comes from opensecrets.org, an independent organization whose only purpose is to track money and money that goes to campaigns and all different campaigns. And as you can see, this is for the New York 22nd race, and highlighted is the outside spending. If you go onto their site, you'll be able to see exactly what I'm talking about. And on that site, what you'll see there is that right now there has been about $6.2 million spent for Claudia Tenney by outside PACs, and for Anthony Brindisi, $6.1 million has been spent by outside PACs. That's the outside spending in this race. So over $12 million, separate of any donations made to any of the candidates, have been spent on this race alone, which is right in line with what I had expected for this race if you go back and listen to my earlier podcasts from last year and earlier this year. And here's the thing that I find interesting. So the spending is almost exactly the same. But what's the big difference? Anthony Brindisi has 16 PACs that are providing him that $6.1 million. Claudia Tenney has 7. Mr. Brindisi, who hates the super PACs and is talking about how he wants to create legislation to stop them and no one should be able to accept money from these. And he blames Claudia Tenney and the Republicans for being able to accept super PAC money. Mr. Brindisi has 4 of those. Claudia Tenney has 3. So one of the first things that I would like to bring up to people when they're thinking about this race and they're listening to the candidate, and this is very important, regardless of whether you like the candidates or not. Notice I haven't said whether you should or should not like these candidates. That's not my question here. My question is what's being said and what is not being said to you. And one of the things that's not being said is Mr. Brindisi is making a claim about outside spending, but at the same time he is accepting that outside spending, accepting that influence because it benefits him. If he were truly being direct with the audience and to the voters out there, he would actually say that there's been outside spending. I have rejected it. I am trying to stop it. I do not wish to have it. And tell them to take away that $6.1 million, of which about $2 million of that comes from the House majority, the majority House PAC. House Majority PAC, which is run by Nancy Pelosi. So he's indirectly taking $2 million from Nancy Pelosi, but yet says he's a very independent person from Nancy Pelosi and he owes her nothing. Even though he's accepted direct donations from Nancy Pelosi, which he did eventually admit, he tried to avoid that in the conversation, and Liz Benjamin had to nail him down 3 times to get him to admit that he is in fact receiving payments, received donations from Nancy Pelosi. I can tell you for a fact in my conversation with Anthony Brindisi, when he first launched his campaign here in Binghamton in June of 2017, he admitted that, and he confirmed to me what I already knew, that he had gone down and met with Nancy Pelosi in Congress in Washington, D.C. in May of that year. So I know that there's been some connection between Nancy Pelosi and Anthony Brindisi, and that he is in fact spoken to her and has gotten her blessing and he is involved with her. So for him to say that he's completely independent of her and he rejects any of her influence, that's not correct. He accepted her influence when he went down to D.C. to speak with her. He accepted her influence when she donated to his campaign, and he's accepted her influence when her outside PAC has spent $2 million on his campaign that he has never once said he doesn't want. even though at the same time he's saying that Claudia Tenney should not have that. So that's something that's, I think, very important for voters to know. Where does he stand on PACs? Well, if they're good for him, he's happy. And if it's good for someone else, then he's not happy. And he has a lot of them. So that's something that I think that's kind of important. And before we get to the break, I also, because I want to go over how this influenced me and what I saw in that, I also want to go over immigration. That was a big deal. There was a lot of conversation about that. And I think that's important for people to know. And again, you should see the actual debate so that you can make your own comments on it. But I saw that he was speaking about illegal immigration, which I thought was a very important issue. And in there, he kind of left out something that, as he was talking about illegal immigration, he's talking about a path to citizenship. And that's something that he's been long in favor of. In fact, there is the New York DREAM Act, which Mr. Brindisi has supported. As you can see on the screen, that's the bill A09605. That's an important bill. Now you're saying to me, Mike, what's that all about? That's about giving illegal aliens in our school system a free boat, essentially, to pay for them to be able to go to college. Not for residents of New York State, not for the poor of New York State, but illegal aliens. People who have come to this nation, and in this case, children, but some of them, when they define them as children, that could be anyone from the age of 18 to 30 year olds, to be able to give them a free pass to go to college, to have it all paid for. And that's going to be paid for by taxpayers and citizens. And Mr. Brindisi has supported that. He supported shutting down the government in January of 2018 for 800,000 illegal aliens at the cost of 330 million Americans. That's his record. That's a fact. He's done that. It's been on Twitter, and he put out tweets about that in January of 2018. There have been articles about that. That's not in dispute. That's not me making up something. That's a fact. So Mr. Brindisi, and he's voted on this as well more than once to support the illegal aliens. So when he says that he's a moderate, we have to take into account that his moderation means that when he talks about some of the issues out there, when he talks about enforcing the law or making sure the law is good, well, that means that he wants to take people who have broken the law, criminals, illegal aliens, and reward them for that criminal activity by giving them citizenship. This is something that when this is coming up, you have to think, we have the migrants coming up from Guatemala, which is a very interesting question. A bunch of people who are wearing T-shirts with American English slogans on them that have camera crews that are following them on a multi-hundred mile, thousands of miles trip into the United States. They have camera crews with them. When was the last time you saw a bunch of illegal immigrants coming into America that carried camera crews with them? And that's a very interesting question, and why that is unclear. Who would have motivated them and somehow paid for this camera crew to follow these thousands, somewhere between 5,000 to 15,000 people as they try and trek into the United States? Where are they getting their supplies? What motivated them to suddenly come? There's a lot of questions with that. But no matter how they get here, it would seem that Anthony Brindisi has a very strong opinion that the best answer for all of these people who are coming into our nation illegally is to provide them with citizenship so that they can vote, so that they can benefit from the taxes and the efforts of American citizens. You may agree with that, you may not, but that wasn't clear in his wording, in his statements when he was speaking on Spectrum in the debate, because he didn't have a whole lot of time because it was only 3 minutes. I don't have that restriction, and I have done the research, and it shows he's more than willing to take our taxes, American citizen taxes, and use them for the benefit of illegal aliens, individuals who have broken our law, and reward them. That's kind of troubling to me. It's a thought. That troubles me, and I think that's something that needs to be clear for voters out there. But before I go any further, let me take a quick break, and then we'll be right back because there's way more on this, but I'll try and be brief. But I'll be back in a second. Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining me back here at the No Sound Bites Allowed podcast. This is your host, Michael Voss, with a special episode just dealing with the New York 22nd debate at the Colgate University, covered by Spectrum News. And I should also just thank everybody, all of you, for being here with me and joining me in this experience. You guys all make it worthwhile. You're the reason why I do this, and I thank you, even as I'm up late or early in the morning on October 25th. And again, you'll be able to see the Spectrum News, and I'll have, if people miss that, I have audio of the entire event from being there live, and I'll be happy to play that and have that for people in case they miss it or they're unable to get it from Spectrum News. And this is one of the most important races in the nation. It's in the top 10. As I said, over $12 million in just outside spending has been spent so far, with another $3 million by each of the candidates. that puts it at somewhere around $18 million for an election. It's one of the most expensive elections ongoing at the moment. It's a huge amount of money, and we still have 2 weeks to go with probably another $1 million each coming into this race. So it's going to be huge. But a lot of things that, even though there's outside spending, there's attack ads all over the place, there's the campaign ads that are going on, there's a lot of flyers that are going out in the mail, there's the debates that are going on. This was the second debate that the candidates have had, and yet there's still a lot of information that hasn't been revealed. And that's very interesting, because there was a recent poll out of Siena saying that this race is about 1 point difference, where Claudia Tenney is favored by men, Anthony Brindisi slightly favored by women, and the race is about 1 point. I still stand by my belief that there's going to be about 177 to 186,000 people who vote in this midterm election, which will be about 4 out of 10 voters that are available that will actually come out and vote. I would love to see more, but that's my expectation. And I still believe that the race is going to be roughly about 51% for Claudia Tenney, roughly about 45% for Anthony Brindisi, with about 7% that are going to have either blanks or write-in votes. So I stand by that prediction at this moment. I think my data still stands. But I think there's a lot of things. It's because people are learning more about Anthony Brindisi as we go. And one of the things that I hear is throughout this entire debate, like I said, on the outside spending, we're seeing two different sides to this, where what's beneficial to Mr. Brindisi, he won't talk about, but if it's beneficial to his opponent, incumbent Claudia Tenney, then he attacks that and says that's a bad thing, even though he's receiving the exact same thing, doing exactly the same thing. And that's kind of strange, in that he's not talking about the important issues. When he talks about immigration, he doesn't want to talk about his support that he's been putting out there for years now as a member of the New York Assembly to vote for and support illegal aliens over citizens, using taxes of citizens and residents, even as the unemployment rate exceeded that of the entire nation, exceeded in the Mohawk Valley and also in the Southern Tier, exceeded the unemployment rate of the nation and New York State, and people were hard hit in the economics. He still was willing to take the taxpayer money and put it out there and give it away to people who have broken the law, illegal aliens, and say, well, he's going to help them instead. That's a bit troubling to me. That's something that people should know about, so that when they're voting, they know what they're voting for. One of the other things that I thought was very important to bring up, and people should note and be very clear about, Anthony Brindisi, in his discussion with Spectrum News, in answering Ms. Benjamin, said he did not support single-payer health care. Now, that's an important issue, because he's admitted more than once that he's voted in favor of New York single-payer, which would increase the cost to taxpayers. It would double the New York State budget. It's about $200 billion for this new single-payer health care plan that he wants for New York State. And he's been asked about, did he want to do that for the nation? His answer was no. Liz Benjamin again asked him, are you sure about that? Are you sure that you've never said, as Claudia Tenney alleged, that he has ever said that he votes for and is in favor of single-payer health care, which is promoted by Nancy Pelosi and the rest of the Democrats? And his answer was no. Now, that would be the answer of what most moderates would say. And he says he believes in the flawed Obamacare, the ACA, which Democrats have long ago admitted was a flawed and broken law and didn't function properly. And he blames the part of it on the fact that the mandate, the individual mandate, was broken. But it was already broken by the definition of the law, as Democrats had long ago admitted back in 2010, 2011. But the thing is about the single payer, when he says he's never supported that and that he would never vote for that, in fact, if you go to Real Clear Politics, again, an independent source, an independent site that just covers politicians and what they do, Anthony Brindisi is their cover story. He is the lead story on there. That's his picture on there. In an article that they wrote, progressive Democrats push party leftward on healthcare. It is an article by their organization, Real Clear Politics, denoting a video from July 20th of 2018 where Anthony Brindisi, I believe, was in the Binghamton University in the Southern Tier speaking to a small group of students, and he mentions that he looks forward to having single-payer health care for the nation, that he in fact supports it. But the first thing in the path to single-payer health care is through Obamacare. That's what he says. The video is about 53 seconds long, but that is the clip that Real Clear Politics found from July 20th, 2018. Anthony Brindisi effectively lied to every single voter that watched the Spectrum News article. He lied. And Real Clear Politics has the news in the event. And I think that's very important for people to know, for any voters to know, that whether you agree with single payer or not, that's not the question. The question is, when he was asked, and when he was asked for clarification and to confirm, does he support single-payer health care, Anthony Brindisi came back and emphatically said, and you saw it in the video, in the footage on Spectrum News, he said, no, never, does not support it. And yet, there is a video from July 20th, 2018, where he's saying, yes, he absolutely does support it, and he does want it for the nation, and that he would look forward to voting for that. So, again, we're looking at a candidate that's saying one thing to one group and another thing to another group and expecting that no one's going to put these two things together and that no one will ever know. And I'm providing you some of the sites for you to be able to make your mind up on it and to see the proof. So that's kind of troubling. That's actually very troubling. And when we're talking about healthcare, we also have to talk about something that didn't come up in the race that should have in the debate about Utica. And I think actually Claudia Tenney did bring it up a little bit, was talking about the fact that Anthony Brindisi, and he mentioned this in Binghamton on October 23rd when I was there, and I asked him about this, about his statement that he would punish his constituents if they opposed the downtown hospital that he wanted to approve of. And he said, no, I've never said that, except when you go to WVRO, and here is the article, emails reveal Utica officials push downtown location for new hospital on January 16th of 2018. They directly quote and say that he had stated and was revealed in FOIA, Freedom of Information Act emails, that he did in fact say he would punish any of his constituents and all of his constituents for questioning his decision. It further states in that article by that news organization, not political commentary, a news organization that had his Freedom of Information Act emails, and they published it, stating that he also was creating an organization to help silence anyone who would question him, because he didn't want questions about this downtown hospital and wanted to go forward. This is why there has been a scandal going on in Utica since January, 10 months now, going into the 11th month, and why there's over 5,000 people, Utica residents, who oppose him and are voting against him, roughly about 1.5% of the vote that are going to be coming up, about 1.5% of the vote, that he lost immediately because of what he said in his emails, because he's forcing this on people. But yet he's publicly saying, no, I've never said that. No, that isn't true. That doesn't exist, except the articles do exist on WVRO, at the Utica Observer Dispatch, at WUTQ, a news talk radio station. This has been an ongoing issue and an ongoing fact. And yet he wants to tell voters who don't know about this in the Southern Tier and say, no, that didn't happen. That doesn't exist. I'm sorry, Mr. Brindisi, you don't get to have it both ways. Either you're telling people the truth or you're not, and that isn't true. You do support single-payer health care because there is proof of that, and you do and have sent out emails saying that you would punish people for opposing your opinion and for opposing legislation that you're trying to shove down their throats that they didn't want. Those are facts. You can't deny that. I'm showing the proof of it right here. But Mr. Brindisi went further, and he went on to discuss other things that I think are important. And I'm going to go over that in just one second when we come right back. All right, everybody, how are you? And thank you for joining me here. And I apologize, missed that almost for a second. This is Michael with the No Sound Bites Allowed podcast, and I am here, your Dragon of the Southern Tier, and I thank you all always for being here with us. Always. You guys make it all worthwhile, and I thank you, each and every one of you, for being involved, and I thank you for checking out this special episode being done early in the morning on October 25th. In reaction to the debate at Colgate University and some of the things that were not being said. And this is important because, I mean, Claudia Tenney, she has a record. You can go to congress.gov and you can look up that record and you'll be able to see everything that she has actually voted on, every bill she has submitted. You compare that directly to what she has said on the campaign trail and you can make a decision on that. That is a record that is very, very clear. And she has been very consistent in what she has said in 2014, 2016, and now in 2018 on the issues, on where she stands, and what she is trying to do for her constituents as a member of Congress. It's very consistent. It's all the same things she said in 2014 or things she's saying in 2018. The position she held in 2014 or the position she holds in 2018. She's been very consistent about that. And yet, we're listening to Mr. Brindisi, and we're seeing a lot of inconsistency, where we see that Mr. Brindisi is saying there are no negative attack ads in his campaign and from the campaign, and yet there are negative attack ads on air. We're hearing him say that political action groups or PACs are bad and they shouldn't, and they're a terrible thing, and they shouldn't be allowed to go out there and influence people, but yet he has 16 of them that are backing him with $6.1 million, and he's got nothing to say about that. He's yet to once say that he doesn't want their influence involved or that he denounces them, which is inconsistent. We're hearing Mr. Brindisi talk about immigration while leaving out the fact that he is a strong supporter of rewarding illegal aliens for a long time while he's been in elected office, but yet says that this is the only proper way to go forward, even though his constituents and the nation in general do not agree with that, with a path to citizenship. He has gone out there and consistently he's been talking about health care, where he's telling constituents out on the street and in his town halls and his events, he's telling them that he's willing to do a single-payer health care, and that is his ultimate goal, to be able to have single-payer health care and to vote on that, something that the majority of America does not want. And yet he's willing to say on debate that no, he's not for single-payer health care, and that's not something that he's ever said, even though video exists and has been reported by well-known and credible news agencies that he has in fact said that, which is a direct lie to voters out there. He's gone out there and he said, and as I was going through and some of the other things, we have the Utica Hospital where he's denied repeatedly when he's been asked about it, and he's been asked, did he in fact write letters and write emails forcing this issue? Then it's been proven that he has, and he's also been proven to have written to say that he would punish his constituents for questioning him and silencing those questions actively, and yet he denies it. Yet there is, as I just showed you, a credible news agency that is, and several actually news agencies that have proven that this in fact does exist. So again, more inconsistency, something that is another proven lie. The credibility here is in question, and then we have to go to the big issue of the Second Amendment, which is very big in upstate New York. It's a very important issue. It's something that Andrew Cuomo, the Democrats, all disagree with, including Nancy Pelosi. And Mr. Brindisi takes a very odd position on that, because Mr. Brindisi has said that he's a supporter of the Second Amendment and that he believes in it, and that was based on his, and if you look at his interviews in 2013, 2014, 2015, even in 2016, he touted the fact that he had an NRA rating of an A because he voted against the SAFE Act. But now, in this election, and only in this election cycle since 2018, he's been saying that, well, no, I only voted for the SAFE Act because I had 3 hours. So since I didn't read the bill, I voted against the bill. But he also mentions how he was talking to people in the 3 hours that he had available to try and read the bill. He was contacting people to try and find out whether or not it would have an impact on his constituents, which is interesting since there wasn't a whole lot of time. So I'm not sure how he had enough time to read the bill and speak to these individuals. But let's go with that. So he didn't have a lot of time, but he's a Second Amendment supporter, and that's why he was happy to vote against the bill. But yet, at the same time, he's also voted, as I have reported before, along with several other members of the Assembly, and to vote for the red flag legislation, which is a horrible legislation. And as I have proven before and shown in video before in one of my prior podcasts, where when he was asked about it, his answer was, well, I don't want to talk about that issue. No, that's not correct. It's perfectly legal and perfectly fine, even though, according to all documentation out there, including reports of individuals throughout 6 different states, how it's been used to punish individuals without ever creating a crime, as per the definition of the articles themselves, the bills themselves. He's gone out there and voted for the red flag legislation, which caused the NRA to downgrade his rating, and he now has a rating of 7 with the NRA, something that he was previously very proud of at 93%. He now no longer talks about at 7%, and instead says to the members of the anyone who's a firearm owner, no, I'm still a strong supporter of the Second Amendment. Well, the NRA doesn't seem to think so. Your votes for the red flag legislation don't seem to prove that. Your reasoning for why you voted against the New York SAFE Act don't support that by your latest statements. So again, there's an inconsistency. Is he actually for the Second Amendment, which it appears he is not, both in his votes and his words, but yet he's touted that as well, depending on which group he's speaking to. So what we're looking at in this New York 22nd race is a very well-defined candidate in Claudia Tenney. Congresswoman Claudia Tenney is exactly what she has seemed to be. She's very straightforward. She has said exactly what she has said in 2014, 2016, 2018. You will like it or you will not like it, one or the other. She has the support of President Trump and many Republicans, and that's just who she is. And you can like that or not like that. That's up to you. But she has been very consistent in living up to the campaign promises she has put out there. She doesn't have inconsistencies in what she has said and what she has done. Whether you like that or not is a different question. But what she has said is what she has done. And with Anthony Brindisi, we have a very different case, and which is why I'm doing this special episode. Because here I have brought up several issues where what he has said is not what he has done. In fact, it isn't even what he has said, because he has said other things repeatedly to different groups of people at different times, assuming that you cannot figure out what he's actually said before. He apparently is counting on the fact that people are not able to follow this, except I do, and many other people do. And I've found sources, which I have provided to you in this video, so you can now see this in this podcast, and you can look it up for yourself, so that you can get to find out what the truth is, because Mr. Brindisi has put out several different versions of it, and I have to question that. And I would say to anyone, if before you vote, please look up those sources, look up that information, read through the articles, look at the videos, and make the decision for yourself. Do you want to have a candidate that has inconsistencies and is willing to say one thing to one group, another thing to another group, and who knows where he's actually going to stand and what he would actually do? Or do you want someone who's been very consistent? That's a choice for you. That's a choice for the voters. But that's something that I think is important, and that's why I went to the event, to hear firsthand, to watch him, to see him, and to make sure that I could see where he actually stands when he's talking in a debate, as opposed to when I saw him just 2 days earlier in Binghamton at 9 of Riverside Drive, and he was speaking to the public and saying something very different. People have asked me for the sources. I've provided several of them. There are more, but I'll leave it at that because there's only so much time I have. But I did want to provide that to you. But please, let me know your thoughts. Do you think it was informative? Is it important whether a candidate is consistent in what they say at one venue versus another, when they're talking to one group of voters versus another group of voters? Is it important for them to be consistent? Is it important for them to be very clear in what they're looking to do if they get elected? Does that matter to you? Does this make you want to vote or not vote? Does this make you want to vote for or against the incumbent? This is all up to you. But I do ask, and please, I look forward to hearing your comments. I apologize, it's a little bit late at night, but I've been working very hard. And so not a lot of time to do this as well as I wanted, but I hope everyone enjoys it. I look forward to hearing from you all again very, very soon. And until then, I want everyone to be well. Thank you.
If you're eligible for both Medicare and Medicaid, right now you're able to join Essentia Health Plus, a new Medicare Advantage plan that is so much more than just insurance. With Essentia, you get a personal care manager with you every step of the way, and we're dedicated to making sure everyone we serve gets what they need to stay healthy.
The more I do for them, the more I am satisfied. It's a privilege to help someone, and I am so grateful that Essentia gives me a chance to do this every day.
We can also help with in-home care, medical equipment, transportation, even hearing aids and over-the-counter medications. It's an integrated approach to better care.
The thing that makes me most proud is to work for an organization that allows me to be the best that I can be. And I know that together we are giving our patients the best care.
Contact us now with any questions and to enroll for next year. Call Essentia Health Plus.